Hey there, Drowsy Historian here. Tonight you're aboard one of Magellan's ships, drifting across the endless ocean on a voyage around the world, where the salt air, creaking wood, and patient horizon stretch as far as the eye can see. You're not a captain or an officer, just an ordinary sailor moving through the slow rhythm of life at sea. Before we start, do me one small favour. Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is there. If you prefer these stories without ads, you can join the Patreon. It's linked in the description. And if you want the ultimate immersive experience, consider using a pair of wireless earbuds. They're comfortable, discreet, and designed so you can wear them even while sleeping. I've linked my favourite pair, plus other sleep tools, in the description. Now, lie back, get comfortable. Let's begin. You stand at the docks of Seville, where ropes creak and gulls cry, and everything seems to move in slow rhythm, a kind of tired breathing shared between men and wood and water. The morning air tastes faintly of salt and oranges, a sweetness already bruised by the scent of tar. Around you, sailors shuffle in silence, their boots pressing old stains into the planks, a map of every journey that began and never returned. The ships wait, their hulls broad and patient, painted with promises that no one entirely believes. You look at them as if at animals half asleep, tethered to the pier, dreaming of the deep. Each one bears a name meant to sound divine: Trinidad, San Antonio, Concepcion, Victoria, Santiago. Yet all of them seem more human than holy, wrapped in rope and rot, exhaling the faint musk of mildew and ambition. Somewhere inside their bellies, casks roll, nails groan, and a hammer rings in a slow, methodical rhythm, the heartbeat of departure. You don't remember choosing this life, not clearly, only that someone spoke of glory, and you believed them because it was easier than saying no. You remember the smell of parchment, the scratch of a quill, and a voice reading something official, something about pay and rations, and the glory of Spain. You remember nodding. You remember the sound of your own name being recorded, the way it echoed slightly in the small room. After that, everything began to move, gently, inevitably, toward water. The harbour is awake now, though no one truly looks alive. Men carry barrels across narrow planks, bending under their weight, eyes unfocused. A clerk in a faded coat counts them aloud, his numbers drifting on the breeze. No one listens. Counting has become a ritual, something done to remind everyone that order still exists. Behind him, crates are opened and shut again. Biscuits, salted meat, vinegar, dried beans, small tokens of civilization, destined to spoil in the humidity of another ocean. You walk among them, a shadow in motion, following orders that have already lost their meaning. The morning sun slides along the water, reflecting off the wet ropes, blinding and soft. You squint against it and feel for a moment the faint pull of something larger. Not excitement exactly, but a kind of surrender. It's easier to drift with the current than to resist it. A boy nearby hums under his breath as he stacks wooden bowls. The tune has no melody. It repeats itself until it becomes part of the air. Somewhere beyond the docks, church bells ring, slow and indifferent. They could be marking the hour, or blessing the voyage, or simply reminding the city that time is still passing. You realise it doesn't matter which. Someone calls your name, not loudly, and you turn to find a man handing you a folded piece of paper. It lists the ship's provisions, quantities, numbers, weights, all written in an elegant hand that has never touched salt water. You sign the bottom without reading it, your fingers leaving a smudge. The ink shines briefly, then dulls. You hand it back, and he moves on to the next name. A wind picks up, lifting the edges of the tarps, stirring the smell of the river, muddy, cold and full of secrets. You breathe it in slowly, letting it settle somewhere deep in your chest. This is the scent of beginnings, though it feels nothing like hope. The men talk of distant islands and gold, of routes that will make them legends. You hear the words but not the faith. The world they imagine feels flat, like a map laid across a table, edges neat, oceans blue and harmless. The real one waits beyond the mouth of the Guadalquivir, vast and heavy, unmarked. You pause by a crate stamped with the royal emblem. Its lid is nailed shut, but you can guess what's inside. Weapons polished for ceremonies that will never happen, flags that will fade before they're raised, symbols that mean everything to those who stay behind, and almost nothing to those who leave. You brush your hand across the wood. It's warm from the sun, rough with splinters. You think of the journey ahead and realize there is no shape to it, only distance. A gull lands on the railing near you, its eyes pale and empty. It pecks at something unseen, then lifts off again, wings slicing the air. You watch it vanish into the glare. You wonder how far it will go before turning back. Most creatures, you think, know when to return. The voice of the quartermaster drifts through the noise, calm, measured, never raised. He's been saying the same things for weeks. Where to place the barrels, how to coil the ropes, when to rest, when to work. You can tell he no longer hears his own words. He speaks because silence would admit doubt. That's something the Voyage cannot afford. The hours stretch thin. Shadows shorten, then lengthen again. By midday, the harbour smells of sweat and oil, of bread left too long in the sun. You drink water from a tin cup, though it tastes faintly of iron. Someone near you laughs, a small tired sound. You don't know the joke, but you let it linger, soft as a breeze. In this place, even laughter feels rehearsed. Beyond the warehouses, the city continues. Narrow streets, tiled roofs, the hum of daily life untouched by departure. You think of the people there, sitting at taverns, speaking of explorers as if they were myths already written. You wonder if they ever imagine the noise, the smell, the boredom that fills the spaces between discovery. Probably not. Stories are always cleaner than truth. You look again at the ships. Men climb the rigging like slow-moving insects, adjusting the sails that will soon carry you away. The canvas breathes in the wind, a vast white lung. Somewhere, beneath all the movement, the wood sighs. It sounds almost human. You imagine the ship remembering every voyage it has carried, every name carved into its bones. Soon it will remember yours too. A priest appears near the pier, robe fluttering, face red from the heat. He blesses the fleet in a language that sounds like distant thunder. Holy water falls in brief, glittering arcs. The droplets strike the deck, vanish, and leave nothing behind. The men cross themselves out of habit, out of fear, out of superstition. You mimic them without thinking. The gesture feels less like faith and more like acknowledgement, a quiet agreement with uncertainty. The tide shifts. The ropes tighten against their posts, creaking softly. A sailor near you mutters that it will be soon. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe the next dawn. You nod. No one seems to know the exact hour of departure, but it hardly matters. The leaving has already begun. It started the moment you signed the paper, maybe earlier. Every motion since has only been confirmation. As evening slides across the harbour, the colours change. Gold becomes grey. Blue turns to slate. The noise fades until only the faint slap of water remains. Lanterns are lit along the pier, their reflections trembling like memories that can't stay still. The air cools, and with it comes a silence so deep it almost hums. You find a place to sit, a coil of rope near the edge. The wood beneath you is damp. You watch the ripples gather around the posts and break softly against the hulls. Somewhere in the distance, a bell rings again. You count the echoes until they fade. You think about how many nights will sound like this. The slow, measured breathing of the sea, the rhythm of men pretending they understand it. A breeze brushes your face, carrying the faint scent of citrus from the city. For a moment you think of home, the narrow room, the window that looked over a courtyard, the sound of someone sweeping at dawn. The memory feels small, almost decorative, like something you once owned but forgot the purpose of. You try to hold it, but the wind takes it back. Somewhere down the dock, a man hums again, the same wordless tune as before. It rises and falls with the water. You close your eyes and let it carry you. The harbour sways gently beneath you, and the world seems to tilt just enough to make you drowsy. You don't dream yet, but you feel close. The ships rest, waiting for morning. Their masts lean toward the stars like tired prayers. You imagine the ocean beyond them, endless, patient, indifferent, and realise it has already begun to pull you in. You breathe, slow and even, and listen to the sound of ropes shifting in the dark. You don't think about tomorrow. You think only of the quiet harbour and how it holds its breath before the first step into forever. The morning finds you below deck, where the air no longer belongs to the world outside. It hangs in layers, stale, sour and alive with the smell of old wood and damp rope. Lantern light spills across the beams, revealing a narrow space crowded with barrels, each one sweating quietly in the humidity. You move through them as though walking inside the lungs of the ship, careful not to disturb the rhythm of its breath. Your hands touch the sides of the casks as you pass. Salted pork, vinegar, dried beans, water, oil, each marked, sealed and recorded. The wood is rough and cold, slick where the brine has leaked through. The ink on the markings has begun to blur, letters fading before they've even set sail. You stop at one and trace a finger along the word carne. The salt has drawn the colour from the wood, leaving it pale and ghostly. Everything here, you think, is already turning into memory. A man with a ledger calls out numbers. His voice sounds muffled, as if trapped inside the pages. You answer without thinking, your own voice thin against the echoing hull. The exchange repeats itself. Mechanical, predictable. A ritual meant to impose sense on a world that no longer obeys it. The act of counting becomes a kind of prayer. Each entry, another way of saying we are still here, we still exist, we still believe in the arithmetic of survival. The smell grows heavier as the lanterns burn low. Somewhere, water drips, patient and indifferent. It might be condensation or a leak, or just the ship settling into its own weight. You stop to listen, counting the rhythm. It falls with the precision of a clock, though there are no clocks here. Only time, shapeless and moist, collecting in corners. You lift a lid to inspect the contents of a barrel. Inside, rows of biscuits, hard as stone, stamped with the royal seal. You knock one against the edge. It sounds like bone. A fly circles lazily above it before vanishing into the shadows. You close the lid and press the seal tight again. The air tastes of mildew and iron. Voices rise above deck, orders, movement, the scrape of crates being dragged across planks. The ship is filling itself, swallowing everything it will need to stay alive. Men pass by in single file, shoulders bent beneath sacks of flour. No one speaks to you, but they nod in rhythm, each face marked by the same dull understanding. Every pound loaded now will one day be lifted again. Emptier, lighter, gone. You find yourself near the bow, where the floor slopes slightly. The lanterns sway. The shadows move with them, slow and deliberate, like something alive. You sit for a moment on a crate labelled aceite de oliva. The oil inside sloshes quietly, thick and golden. Its sound reminds you of the river, that same soft persistence. You close your eyes and almost hear the harbour again. Gulls, bells, the faint hum of the city. But when you open them, there's only the close dark, the smell of salt, the sound of another barrel being rolled into place. The quartermaster passes through, his steps steady, his coat brushed with sawdust. He checks the lists against the marks, his eyes scanning the numbers without expression. He pauses once, adjusts a figure, and moves on. His face is not cruel, only tired. You watch him disappear between the rows, swallowed by the monotony. A man like that, you think, could live forever, as long as there's something to count. A rat darts across the floor. Its fur shines briefly in the light before it slips into a crack near the waterline. You follow it with your eyes, but there's no sound after it goes. The ship has already accepted it. Some of the men call them bad omens. Others say they're companions, creatures that know how to survive what humans invent. You decide not to think about it. Someone opens the hatch above, and sunlight slices through the dark, sharp and white. Dust rises in the beam, like fine sand suspended in water. You breathe it in and feel it catch in your throat. The light turns the space into something unreal, a cathedral of cargo and shadows. For a moment, it's beautiful in its emptiness. When the hatch closes, the air seems heavier, thicker, as though the world outside has withdrawn again. You return to the ledger, reading names of goods that have lost their meaning. Rice, peas, cheese, almonds, gunpowder. You imagine them rotting one by one, turning soft, sour, unrecognizable. Yet here they are, written neatly, each with its number and measure, its promise of control. You hear a voice from behind, a low chuckle, not quite humour. A man sits against a stack of crates, sharpening a knife on a whetstone. The sound is rhythmic, almost soothing. He doesn't look up as he speaks. Funny thing, he says. We carry all this to keep us alive, and all it does is remind us how close we are to dying. You nod. It isn't a conversation. It's simply noise to fill the air. The knife keeps whispering against the stone. You keep writing. The ship creaks as though agreeing. Above the bells ring faintly, the sound filtered through layers of wood and air. It feels distant, like a memory of church. You realise the day is moving without you. The sun must have shifted, but here it makes no difference. Time behaves strangely below deck. It slows, thickens, forgets itself. You could stay for an hour or a lifetime and never know which. When you climb the ladder to the deck, the light hits you like a weight. The sky is too wide. You blink until the shapes return, the masts rising like bare trees, the men moving between them, the water beyond, flat and endless. The air here smells of wind and resin, cleaner but no kinder. You stand for a moment, adjusting to the brightness, then turn toward the stores being hoisted aboard. Barrels swing in the air on thick ropes, groaning with their own mass. Men guide them, hands on the ropes, faces turned away from the sun. The motion is slow, careful, inevitable. A single misstep could crush a man, but no one seems afraid. There's a kind of resignation in their movements. The same acceptance you felt below deck, translated into muscle and rope. The sound of hammering rises again. Nails driven into place, lids sealed, boards secured. The rhythm is steady, almost musical. You think about how many times those same sounds have echoed in harbours just like this, for voyages that vanished into mist. The thought doesn't frighten you. It only makes the moment feel longer. A clerk calls out another list. His voice merges with the hammering, the creak of pulleys, the murmur of the river. Everything becomes one long note, unbroken. You breathe it in and feel the ship's body growing around you. Plank by plank, number by number. By dusk, the loading slows, the men rest against barrels, sweat drying in pale streaks on their skin. Someone passes a jug of water, another wipes the dust from his hands. You find yourself staring at the horizon, the same soft blur where sky and river meet. It hasn't changed since yesterday. It may never change again. The quartermaster's voice carries over the deck, reading the final tallies. His tone is flat, precise, almost tender. There's comfort in the completion of lists. The men nod as though absolved. Around you, ropes tighten, sails shift, and the ship exhales. A long, low sound that seems to come from its bones. Night gathers slowly. Lanterns are lit again, their glow trembling against the dark. You lean against the rail and watch the reflection of the light on the water. Gold trembling on black. Somewhere below, among the barrels and lists, everything you'll need for months lies waiting, silent and sealed. You think of it as a kind of promise, though it feels more like a sentence. The air cools. A breeze rises from the river, carrying the smell of wet rope and unburned oil. You close your eyes and listen to the creak of the ship, the faint clatter of chains, the water brushing against the hull. It sounds like breathing again. Slow, steady, endless. You match your own breath to it until you can't tell which is which. The men begin to drift towards sleep, some curled in corners, others leaning against barrels they've lifted all day. Their murmurs fade one by one, leaving only the ship and the water. You stay where you are, hands resting on the rail, eyes half open. Somewhere in the dark, the quartermaster closes his book. The sound is final, like the turning of a key. You imagine the barrels below, the rows of supplies resting in their quiet order. Each one holds a measure of survival, a portion of time. Together they weigh more than the ship itself. You think about how much longer the world will feel this heavy, how long before counting stops mattering. The wind shifts, and the ropes whisper against the mast. You breathe again, slow and even. The air tastes of salt and ink, and something faintly metallic, the residue of what's coming. You don't move. The ship rocks gently beneath you, cradling the weight of provisions, the weight of men, the weight of every name written down to keep from being forgotten. And somewhere, far beyond the edge of the harbour, the sea waits, vast, patient and indifferent, as if it has already begun to measure you too. The morning arrives without ceremony. The river lies still beneath a thin veil of fog, and the sound of the bells reaches you before the light does. A slow toll, patient and distant, folding into the rhythm of the water against the hull. You rise because everyone else does. No one speaks. It feels less like waking and more like being summoned. The deck is slick with dew. The ropes glisten, coiled like sleeping serpents. Somewhere above, sails unfurl with a soft, deliberate sigh, filling with the first breath of wind. The sound is immense, yet gentle, a single exhale stretched across the sky. You watch the canvas swell, white and endless, and feel the ship tremble. Not from fear, but from remembering its purpose. The men move around you in quiet coordination. Boots thud against wet planks. Pulleys creak, and the low murmur of commands passes through the air like prayer. The harbour, once so loud, has grown hushed, as though the city itself is holding its breath. The only motion now is the slow shifting of the tide, urging the ship outward. You glance toward the shore. Saville is still there, pale rooftops stacked like old bones, the faint shape of a cathedral's tower piercing the mist. From here, it already looks like memory. People line the docks, small and silent, their faces blurred by distance. Some wave, others simply watch. The gulls circle above them, their cries sharp and short-lived. A priest raises his hand in blessing, his voice lost in the wind. A thin trail of smoke drifts from a censer, curling upward, swallowed by the morning. You can't smell the incense from here, only the thicker scent of tar and wet rope, of the river stirred from its sleep. You imagine the holy words falling uselessly into the water, dissolving before they reach you. Orders are given. The mooring lines are loosened, thick ropes sliding across the pier with a low groan. One by one, they drop into the river. Heavy, final. The ship shifts its weight, an animal testing its limbs. You feel it beneath your feet. That subtle change in balance. The world tilting slightly toward motion. The current catches. The prow turns gently away from the dock, and the space between ship and land begins to widen. The men at the rail watch in silence as the distance grows. A few meters, then more. The city seems to recede rather than the ship moving forward. You realize that leaving is not movement but erasure. The bells continue to ring, slower now, as though fading into themselves. The sails tighten. The wind gathers. You hear the captain's voice, steady, formal, stripped of emotion, calling to adjust the rigging. The words are simple, practiced, but they sound enormous in the stillness. They mark the beginning, though it feels nothing like one. The river widens as you drift downstream. The water glints like dull metal under the weak sun. Along the banks, warehouses give way to fields, then to empty stretches of earth where the horizon becomes a smudge. You stand by the railing, watching as colour drains from the world, the ochres of the city replaced by the grey-green monotony of open water. Someone near you hums soft and tuneless, just enough to disturb the silence. The sound mixes with the creak of wood and the slap of water against the hull. It's a kind of music that doesn't ask to be heard. It simply exists, like breathing. You find yourself matching your heartbeat to it, slow and even. The river air carries the scent of silt and decay, of vegetation half alive. It clings to your clothes, mixes with sweat, becomes part of you. You wipe your palms on your trousers, but the dampness never leaves. Every surface is moist, rope, wood, skin, as though the ship has already begun to merge with the sea. A sailor passes you, carrying a coil of line across his shoulders. His face is blank, focused, eyes fixed somewhere beyond the rigging. He looks as though he's seen this moment before, in dreams or in repetition. You wonder how many times he's left and returned, or if he's ever returned at all. His footsteps fade, swallowed by the noise of the ship settling into its rhythm. The day unfolds without hurry. The sun rises behind a curtain of haze, pale and indifferent. You eat from a wooden bowl, hard bread, a sliver of cheese, water that tastes faintly of the barrel. The food sticks in your throat, but you chew until it disappears, because that's what is required. The act of eating feels less like nourishment, and more like an agreement to continue. The men speak little. There is nothing to say that hasn't already been said, nothing to predict that can be trusted. They move as though pulled by invisible strings, each task performed with quiet precision. You find comfort in their repetition, the same gestures, the same sounds, endlessly replayed. Order is the only thing that feels real. By afternoon, the city has vanished. Only the river remains, winding endlessly toward a horizon you can't see. The ship rocks gently, its movements slow and deliberate. The rhythm is hypnotic, a long inhale, a long exhale. You lean against the rail and watch the ripples stretch away, like threads unraveling into distance. The water darkens as the sun lowers. Shadows move across the deck, thin and soft, blurring the edges of everything. The crew begins to quiet. Someone adjusts a rope, someone else coughs. Beyond that, only the sound of the river, broad, slow, endless. You look back one last time. The land has become a faint smudge, an outline dissolving into mist. The realization arrives without weight. You are gone. Not dramatically, not tragically, just gone. The way a footprint disappears under the tide. The thought should feel enormous, but it doesn't. It feels small, almost bureaucratic, like signing your name again on a document you've already forgotten. The captain stands near the helm, his silhouette rigid against the dimming sky. His posture doesn't change as the light fades. He looks neither forward nor back, as if both directions are the same. The officers move around him, with the quiet assurance of men who understand the ritual, but not the meaning. The ceremony of command continues, even when belief has thinned to routine. The river narrows once more before opening into the sea. You can feel it, the subtle deepening of the ship's motion, the way the water grows heavier beneath the hull. The sound changes too, deeper, slower, as though the world itself has taken a longer breath. The men glance toward the horizon, though nothing waits there yet, only the widening grey. Evening comes without colour. The sails turn darker against the sky, their edges glowing faintly in the last light. The wind shifts, carrying the faint scent of salt. You taste it on your lips, that promise of endlessness. The ship tilts slightly as it catches the open air. The river's boundaries fade. The land draws back one final time, polite and indifferent. The men light the lanterns along the deck. Their glow wavers in the wind, reflected in the water as trembling circles. You watch the patterns form and fade, as if the ship is leaving tiny ghosts behind it. The noise of the harbour is gone now. Only the murmuring of the sea remains, low and steady, like thought itself slowing to sleep. A voice calls from somewhere near the mast, a command, or maybe a prayer. The words drift upward, caught by the sails, scattered into nothing. You tilt your head back and see the first stars appearing, faint and undecided. They seem to move as the ship moves, as if following rather than guiding. You stay at the rail long after the others have gone below. The cold begins to gather in your hands, but you don't move. The sea glows faintly under the moon, its surface smooth and unreadable. You can't tell where the water ends or where the night begins. They have the same texture, the same calm depth. Somewhere beneath that surface lies the world you've left. The docks, the ledgers, the barrels stacked in orderly lines. The thought drifts through you like a slow current, too soft to disturb the stillness. Everything feels suspended, caught between departure and arrival, between the place you were and the place you haven't yet reached. You close your eyes and listen. The sea whispers against the hull. The sails murmur overhead, and the wood beneath your feet moves in a tired rhythm that could go on forever. You breathe with it, slow and quiet, until the line between you and the ship disappears. When you open your eyes again, the horizon is nothing but darkness. The city is gone. The river is gone. There is only the steady pulse of water and wind, and the faint persistent feeling that nothing has changed at all. The morning arrives without ceremony. The river lies still beneath a thin veil of fog, and the sound of the bells reaches you before the light does. A slow toll, patient and distant, folding into the rhythm of the water against the hull. You rise because everyone else does. No one speaks. It feels less like waking and more like being summoned. The deck is slick with dew. The ropes glisten, coiled like sleeping serpents. Somewhere above, sails unfurl with a soft, deliberate sigh, filling with the first breath of wind. The sound is immense yet gentle, a single exhale stretched across the sky. You watch the canvas swell, white and endless, and feel the ship tremble, not from fear, but from remembering its purpose. The men move around you in quiet coordination. Boots thud against wet planks. Pulleys creak, and the low murmur of commands passes through the air like prayer. The harbour, once so loud, has grown hushed, as though the city itself is holding its breath. The only motion now is the slow shifting of the tide, urging the ship outward. You glance toward the shore. Seville is still there, pale rooftops stacked like old bones, the faint shape of a cathedral's tower piercing the mist. From here, it already looks like memory. People line the docks, small and silent, their faces blurred by distance. Some wave, others simply watch. The gulls circle above them, their cries sharp and short-lived. A priest raises his hand in blessing, his voice lost in the wind. A thin trail of smoke drifts from a censer, curling upward, swallowed by the morning. You can't smell the incense from here, only the thicker scent of tar and wet rope of the river stirred from its sleep. You imagine the holy words falling uselessly into the water, dissolving before they reach you. Orders are given. The mooring lines are loosened, thick ropes sliding across the pier with a low groan. One by one, they drop into the river, heavy, final. The ship shifts its weight, an animal testing its limbs. You feel it beneath your feet. That subtle change in balance, the world tilting slightly toward motion. The current catches, the prow turns gently away from the dock, and the space between ship and land begins to widen. The men at the rail watch in silence as the distance grows. A few meters, then more. The city seems to recede rather than the ship moving forward. You realize that leaving is not movement, but erasure. The bells continue to ring, slower now, as though fading into themselves. The sails tighten, the wind gathers. You hear the captain's voice, steady, formal, stripped of emotion, calling to adjust the rigging. The words are simple, practiced, but they sound enormous in the stillness. They mark the beginning, though it feels nothing like one. The river widens as you drift downstream. The water glints like dull metal under the weak sun. Along the banks, warehouses give way to fields, then to empty stretches of earth where the horizon becomes a smudge. You stand by the railing, watching as colour drains from the world, the ochres of the city replaced by the grey-green monotony of open water. Someone near you hums, soft and tuneless, just enough to disturb the silence. The sound mixes with the creak of wood and the slap of water against the hull. It's a kind of music that doesn't ask to be heard. It simply exists, like breathing. You find yourself matching your heartbeat to it, slow and even. The river air carries the scent of silt and decay, of vegetation half alive. It clings to your clothes, mixes with sweat, becomes part of you. You wipe your palms on your trousers, but the dampness never leaves. Every surface is moist, rope, wood, skin, as though the ship has already begun to merge with the sea. A sailor passes you, carrying a coil of line across his shoulders. His face is blank, focused, eyes fixed somewhere beyond the rigging. He looks as though he's seen this moment before, in dreams or in repetition. You wonder how many times he's left and returned, or if he's ever returned at all. His footsteps fade, swallowed by the noise of the ship settling into its rhythm. The day unfolds without hurry. The sun rises behind a curtain of haze, pale and indifferent. You eat from a wooden bowl, hard bread, a sliver of cheese, water that tastes faintly of the barrel. The food sticks in your throat, but you chew until it disappears, because that's what is required. The act of eating feels less like nourishment and more like an agreement to continue. The men speak little. There is nothing to say that hasn't already been said, nothing to predict that can be trusted. They move as though pulled by invisible strings, each task performed with quiet precision. You find comfort in their repetition, the same gestures, the same sounds, endlessly replayed. Order is the only thing that feels real. By afternoon, the city has vanished. Only the river remains, winding endlessly toward a horizon you can't see. The ship rocks gently, its movements slow and deliberate. The rhythm is hypnotic, a long inhale, a long exhale. You lean against the rail and watch the ripples stretch away, like threads unraveling into distance. The water darkens as the sun lowers. Shadows move across the deck, thin and soft, blurring the edges of everything. The crew begins to quiet. Someone adjusts a rope, someone else coughs. Beyond that, only the sound of the river. Broad, slow, endless. You look back one last time. The land has become a faint smudge, an outline dissolving into mist. The realization arrives without weight. You are gone. Not dramatically, not tragically, just gone. The way a footprint disappears under the tide. The thought should feel enormous, but it doesn't. It feels small, almost bureaucratic, like signing your name again on a document you've already forgotten. The captain stands near the helm, his silhouette rigid against the dimming sky. His posture doesn't change as the light fades. He looks neither forward nor back, as if both directions are the same. The officers move around him with the quiet assurance of men who understand the ritual, but not the meaning. The ceremony of command continues, even when belief has thinned to routine. The river narrows once more before opening into the sea. You can feel it, the subtle deepening of the ship's motion, the way the water grows heavier beneath the hull. The sound changes too, deeper, slower, as though the world itself has taken a longer breath. The men glance toward the horizon, though nothing waits there yet. Only the widening grey. Evening comes without colour. The sails turn darker against the sky, their edges glowing faintly in the last light. The wind shifts, carrying the faint scent of salt. You taste it on your lips, that promise of endlessness. The ship tilts slightly as it catches the open air. The river's boundaries fade. The land draws back one final time, polite and indifferent. The men light the lanterns along the deck. Their glow wavers in the wind, reflected in the water as trembling circles. You watch the patterns form and fade, as if the ship is leaving tiny ghosts behind it. The noise of the harbour is gone now. Only the murmuring of the sea remains, low and steady, like thought itself slowing to sleep. A voice calls from somewhere near the mast, a command, or maybe a prayer. The words drift upward, caught by the sails, scattered into nothing. You tilt your head back and see the first stars appearing, faint and undecided. They seem to move as the ship moves, as if following rather than guiding. You stay at the rail long after the others have gone below. The cold begins to gather in your hands, but you don't move. The sea glows faintly under the moon, its surface smooth and unreadable. You can't tell where the water ends or where the night begins. They have the same texture, the same calm depth. Somewhere beneath that surface lies the world you've left, the docks, the ledgers, the barrels stacked in orderly lines. The thought drifts through you like a slow current, too soft to disturb the stillness. Everything feels suspended, caught between departure and arrival, between the place you were and the place you haven't yet reached. You close your eyes and listen. The sea whispers against the hull. The sails murmur overhead, and the wood beneath your feet moves in a tired rhythm that could go on forever. You breathe with it, slow and quiet, until the line between you and the ship disappears. When you open your eyes again, the horizon is nothing but darkness. The city is gone. The river is gone. There is only the steady pulse of water and wind, and the faint, persistent feeling that nothing has changed at all. Morning doesn't arrive here the way it does on land. It seeps in slowly, unnoticed at first. A pale light filtering through the thin fog that clings to the deck. The sea doesn't brighten, it merely becomes less dark. You wake to the same sound you fell asleep to, the steady groan of timbers, the wet rhythm of waves licking the hull. It's not sound anymore, it's the pulse of your existence. The men around you move in silence. There is no need for words. Everything that can be said has already been replaced by motion. Tightening ropes, scrubbing decks, carrying buckets from one end of the ship to the other. Each task feeds into the next, like links in an unbroken chain. The air smells of brine and sweat and old wood, a kind of scent that never leaves your skin, no matter how long you scrub. You begin to measure time differently. There are no hours, only duties. Morning is when the sun hides behind the sailcloth. Noon is when the heat presses down until the deck burns through your soles. Evening is when the wind changes and the lanterns sway. Night is when you can no longer tell the sea from the sky, and between them all, there is nothing, just the rhythm that continues whether you move or not. The ship breathes. That's how it feels now. Alive, immense, full of hidden lungs and bones that groan with each tilt. You've learned to understand its moods. The creak that means the mast is straining, the thud that means a barrel has come loose below, the slow hiss of rope sliding through damp pulleys. Even the silence has its weight, a warning before the wind shifts or the swell grows. At first you tried to count the days. Some men still do, marking them quietly into the wood with the tip of a nail. But the sea makes mockery of counting. It folds days into each other, washing away their edges until they all feel the same. You can't remember when you started sleeping without dreams. You can't remember the last time the world smelled of anything but salt. The sun becomes an abstract idea. You rarely look at it directly. It's only a heat you feel on your skin, or a brightness that bleaches the deck until it looks unreal. Sometimes you close your eyes and imagine the colour of grass, or the shade of a wall, or the flicker of a candle through glass. But the images dissolve too quickly, as if they belong to someone else's memory. The crew's voices have changed. They've grown softer, deeper, almost monotone. Laughter still happens, but it sounds like an echo of habit. Not joy, not mockery, just something remembered from another life. When the men talk, it's about the small things. The rope that frayed, the barrel that leaked, the fish that followed the hull for 3 days and then disappeared. No one talks about home anymore. The word has become too large, too distant to fit between sentences. The food is the same each day: biscuit, dried meat, water that tastes like the inside of old wood. You eat slowly, not because you want to, but because eating quickly feels wrong, like breaking a rule the sea has set. The ship demands rhythm even in hunger. You chew in time with the creaking beams, swallow with the crash of waves. There are no mirrors on board. You've stopped wondering what you look like. Sometimes when you catch your reflection in a puddle of rainwater, you barely recognize the shape staring back. Eyes dulled by salt, skin cracked by wind. It's not shock you feel, only a faint curiosity, as if the face belongs to a story you once heard and forgot. At night, when the lanterns are dimmed, the sea becomes infinite. You lie on your back, the deck hard beneath you, and watch the stars tremble in the dark. They never stay still. They move with the waves as if tied to the same invisible current. Sometimes you feel that the ship isn't moving through the world at all, that the world itself is turning beneath you, endless and circular, never changing, only repeating. The routine deepens. The tasks that once felt burdensome now feel necessary, even sacred. You scrub the same plank every morning, and each stroke feels like a small prayer. You tie knots not because someone told you to, but because the act itself gives shape to the hours. You begin to crave the sound of the whistle that signals the change of shift. Not for rest, but for the reassurance that the pattern still holds. The younger sailors still glance toward the horizon, searching for something. Land, a sign, a difference. You've stopped doing that. The horizon is a lie. It's always there, always the same distance away, promising something it never gives. You understand now that the sea doesn't lead anywhere. It just continues. Sometimes a bird appears, a single dark shape drifting low over the waves. It circles once, maybe twice, before vanishing again into the grey. The men point and whisper as if it means something. You watch silently, knowing it doesn't. Out here, even miracles become part of the pattern. The smell of the ship has changed. At first it was only wood and salt. Now it carries the scent of men who have forgotten how to smell clean. Sweat, damp cloth, unwashed skin, oil. The odours blend into something neither foul nor familiar. A scent that belongs only to this floating world. You breathe it in without thought. It becomes the smell of existence itself. The nights grow quieter the longer you travel. Not because the sea is calm, but because you've learned to stop noticing its sounds. The crash of waves, the slap of water, the creak of beams. They fold into one another until they disappear into silence. You realise that silence isn't the absence of noise. It's the point where every sound becomes the same. You start to forget the feel of standing still. Even when the ship rests, your body sways gently, as if tethered to the invisible rhythm of the water. You try to stand on solid ground in your mind, but even there, you feel the motion, the slow, eternal rocking that has replaced your heartbeat. Some nights you wake suddenly, unsure of what stirred you. You sit up, heart beating hard, eyes searching the dark. Everything looks the same. The dim glow of the lantern, the sleeping forms of men, the endless hum of the sea, but something feels slightly wrong, as if the world has shifted by an inch. You wait, listening, until the feeling fades, and then you lie back down. It always fades. The sea gives you unease, but never answers. You've stopped asking questions. The mind becomes quiet here, worn smooth by repetition. Thought has no room to grow. Each day strips a little more away. Fear, hope, curiosity, until only habit remains. It isn't emptiness, it's a kind of peace. The peace of being reduced to what is necessary. When storms come, they don't break the pattern. They just replace one rhythm with another. The ship groans louder. The men move faster. Voices rise and vanish in the wind. You hold onto ropes slick with rain, blinded by salt water, muscles burning. Yet somewhere beneath the panic, there's recognition. The same repetition, only louder, heavier. Even chaos follows rules here. After the storm passes, the world resets. The deck glistens with water. The sky clears, and the same pale sun reappears as though nothing happened. The sea carries no memory. It forgets faster than men do. Days later, you wake and realize you've forgotten how many days it's been. The thought doesn't frighten you. It feels inevitable, almost comforting. Time, like land, was never meant to survive out here. You spend long hours at the bow, staring into nothing. The wind moves through your hair, the spray touches your lips, and you feel the ship's heartbeats beneath your feet. Everything is connected. Wood, water, flesh, bound by the same ceaseless motion. You no longer ask where it leads. Movement itself has become the answer. The others are the same. They move like extensions of the ship, part of its machinery, their thoughts shaped by its rhythm. When someone speaks, the words drift away too quickly to matter. Even names begin to fade. You call each other by tasks instead: rigger, cook, watchman, as though identity itself has been traded for function. The stars change slightly each night, but only slightly. Enough to suggest that the world is shifting, though it never feels that way. You learn their patterns without meaning to. You know which star marks midnight, which one fades first before dawn. They become companions, silent and predictable. Eventually, you stop noticing when the day begins. You move from one motion to the next, and time flows through you like water through a net, leaving nothing behind. The sea teaches you that survival isn't about progress, it's about endurance, about existing quietly inside the endless repetition until even your thoughts move with the tide. When you lie down at night, you no longer wonder how far you've come. You listen instead to the hum of the sea beneath you, to the breathing of men who have become part of the same unending rhythm. You close your eyes and the sound folds around you, steady, unbroken. And as you drift towards sleep, you realize the strangest truth of all. You've stopped waiting for land. You've stopped waiting for anything. The sea has become the world, and the world for now is enough. You begin to notice the quiet more than anything else. It isn't the silence of peace, but the silence of command. The kind that settles over men who have accepted the limits of their world. The waves still break, the ropes still groan, but beneath it all, there's a hush, a tension stretched thin across the deck. It hums in the air, invisible but heavy, like the faint ringing that lingers after a bell stops. You see him sometimes, the captain, standing at the stern, one hand on the rail, eyes fixed on the horizon that never changes. His posture doesn't shift, not even when the wind stings or the deck tilts beneath him. It's as if he's anchored not to the ship, but to the idea of it. He seems older than he is, though maybe that's just the light. Out here, even youth fades into the same salt-grey exhaustion. He doesn't shout, he doesn't need to. Orders come quietly, filtered through lieutenants, translated into motion. Men move because motion is easier than thought. There's comfort in that, in not questioning, in letting purpose come from elsewhere. Each command feels inevitable, like gravity. When his voice reaches you, it carries a strange weight. It isn't warm nor cruel, it's simply certain, the kind of certainty you stop expecting from the world. He speaks as though he's already seen the map's end, as if the ocean itself has confessed its shape to him. You almost believe him, because it's easier than believing in chance. They say he keeps his charts locked away, even from the officers. He studies them at night by lantern light, the glow bleeding through the cabin window like a secret no one dares name. You pass by once and hear nothing. Not pen, not footstep, not breath, only the faint crackle of the flame. You wonder if he ever sleeps. The men talk about him in whispers, Not gossip, exactly, more like superstition. They say he prays to a different god, one that listens only to maps. They say he carries a relic, something from the east, though no one's seen it. They say he has no fear of the edge of the world, because he's already been there in his mind. You don't ask if it's true. Belief has become currency here. You spend it carefully. Sometimes he walks the deck alone after nightfall. You hear the slow rhythm of his boots, measured and unhurried. Even the sea seems to quiet when he passes. The lantern light paints his shadow across the boards, long, fractured by the motion of the ship, stretching toward the bow, as if trying to touch the unknown ahead. You look at that shadow and realise you know it better than his face. There's something mechanical in the way he moves. Every gesture precise, every turn deliberate. It's the kind of control that makes you uneasy, because it reminds you of things that can break, but don't. He never flinches when the wind shifts, never hesitates when men question. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't have to. Obedience is a reflex now, like breathing. The officers watch him closely. You can feel it. Their loyalty mixed with something colder, not distrust, not yet, something quieter, like the awareness that the ship's fate belongs to a man who believes the sea can be reasoned with. When he speaks of the voyage, his words sound like ritual. We are instruments of discovery, he says. History bends for those who move first. The crew repeats his words softly, as though afraid they might crumble if spoken too loud. You wonder what kind of mind it takes to look at the ocean and see a path, to look at the horizon and call it unfinished. There's courage in that, maybe. Or madness. Out here, the difference feels irrelevant. In the rare moments when he passes close, you catch his scent, parchment, salt, and something faintly metallic, like ink left too long in the sun. His eyes are steady, too steady, the kind that seem to look through you instead of at you. You nod when he speaks, though you never remember the words. They aren't meant for you. They're meant for the air, for the sea, for whatever god listens to men who insist on circling the earth. Once a man is punished for disobedience. It happens quietly. The captain doesn't raise his hand. He doesn't even look angry. The order is given, the lashes delivered, the silence maintained. You watch from a distance, the sound of the whip muffled by the wind. The man's screams are small, almost embarrassed, swallowed by the sea's endless rhythm. When it's over, the captain walks away as if the event had already been accounted for in the day's routine. There's no cruelty in it, only procedure. That's what frightens you most. Days pass, or what you think are days. He remains the same. The ship bends to his will, as if it recognizes something in him, a firmness that belongs to its own wooden soul. When the wind dies, he waits. When it returns, he listens to it, like a priest hearing confession. His calm becomes your shelter. You begin to trust it, even as you fear it. You hear that he keeps a small journal. The pages are never seen, but the rumour alone is enough to make it sacred. Some say he writes not words, but coordinates. Others say he records confessions, promises to the dead, or maps that shift with the tides. You imagine him there, bent over the table, writing in a language no one remembers, a man translating the will of the sea into something human. The voyage changes him, though it's hard to say how. The beard grows thicker, the face leaner, the eyes brighter in the dim light. He speaks less, and yet when he does, men listen harder. The silence that follows his words always feels intentional, as if meaning lingers there, waiting for those who can endure it. Sometimes you wonder what drives him. Not gold, not fame. Those things belong to kings and merchants. His hunger is quieter, older. You sense it in the way he looks at the sky, not with admiration, but with calculation. As if every star is a nail, every constellation a structure to be built, not admired. He doesn't seek beauty, he seeks completion. The longer you sail, the less he seems human. Not divine, just stripped of everything unnecessary, a function rather than a man. You imagine he could stand in a storm, unmoving, the sea breaking itself against him. Some part of you envies that kind of stillness. Some part of you dreads what must be given up to earn it. You dream of him sometimes, not clearly, just flashes. His silhouette against the night sky, his hands over the map, his eyes reflecting the same grey as the sea. In the dream, he doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. His silence becomes the dream itself, vast, unending, without beginning or conclusion. When you wake, the feeling lingers. The ship continues its slow rhythm. The men go about their duties, and somewhere above or below, the captain moves unseen, shaping the air around him without effort. You realise you've started working faster when he's near, though he never watches you directly. The very idea of his gaze has weight. He isn't cruel. That would require emotion. He isn't kind. That would require indulgence. He simply is, like the mast, like the sea. The men call him El Capitan, but it's not a name anymore. It's a title that carries its own gravity. When it's spoken, conversation stops for a breath, not from fear, but recognition. The way one pauses at a church threshold before stepping inside. At dusk, the ship glows faintly gold under the sinking light. You see him there again, hands resting on the rail, his face unreadable. The sky behind him is a deep blue fading into black. The air smells of salt and smoke. He doesn't move as the last rays vanish. He stands still, as though he's waiting for the world to fold itself neatly into darkness. You find yourself watching him longer than you mean to, caught between curiosity and fatigue. The sea murmurs softly against the hull. The ropes sway, the lanterns flicker, everything settles into its nightly order. You close your eyes for a moment, listening to the steady rhythm of the water. When you open them again, he's gone. Only the faint shape of his shadow remains across the deck, long, thin, almost indistinguishable from the lines of the wood. You lie down, feeling the ship breathe beneath you. The air tastes faintly of iron. Somewhere above, the captain is awake, charting a course no one else will ever fully see. You know he's there, not because you hear him, but because the silence feels organised, deliberate. The sea continues to roll beneath the stars, and you drift with it, a small shape in a vast design, moving under the unseen hand of a man who seems carved from the same material as destiny itself. And as sleep begins to pull at you, you think, not in words, but in sensation, that perhaps this is what faith feels like. Not understanding, not hope, but surrender to the quiet certainty of someone else's will. Night doesn't fall anymore. It seeps in, a gradual dimming that feels less like the absence of light and more like the ship is sinking gently into shadow. The lanterns are lit earlier now, though the darkness arrives slower, heavier, as if reluctant to touch you. The sea stretches flat and infinite, a black mirror that catches the reflection of a new sky, one filled with unfamiliar stars. You don't remember when the old constellations disappeared. They simply faded, one by one, like forgotten names. In their place, strange patterns emerge, crooked crosses, cold clusters, faint and pale as dust. The men stare at them with quiet unease. They whisper that these stars don't move the same way, that they watch rather than guide. You look up at them too long, and your mind begins to drift as if the sky itself were tilting. The air feels different here. The wind carries no scent, no hint of land or storm. It moves like breath, shallow and even, passing across your face without weight. The waves murmur softly against the hull, but even their rhythm has changed. Slower, deliberate, like a creature pacing in its sleep. The ocean seems deeper now, as if the world beneath the surface has grown wider than the one above it. You feel it in your bones. The shift. Not dramatic, not sudden. Just a steady change in the way sound travels, the way light fades, the way silence rests between words. The ship no longer creaks the same. Its heartbeat has changed tempo, its lungs filled with foreign air. The ropes hum differently in the wind. You notice these things without meaning to, the way you notice your own breathing. Magellan still walks the deck at night, his shape outlined against the dim glow of lanterns. Sometimes he stands beside the helmsman, his hand tracing lines in the air, as if mapping invisible borders between the stars. You watch from the shadows, the way his eyes reflect that pale southern light, sharp and distant. He doesn't seem to sleep anymore. None of you do, not really. The stars pulse faintly, their light thin and cold. They hang lower than before, almost within reach. You stretch out a hand once, half awake, and for a moment it feels as if they might fall into your palm. Tiny, weightless stones, too fragile to touch. You lower your hand and feel the motion of the ship beneath you, slow and endless, carrying you farther from everything you understand. The nights have become longer, or perhaps the days have learned to hide. The horizon no longer glows with dawn, as it once did. It just lightens slightly, the darkness bleeding into grey before sliding back again. The sun, when it appears, feels wrong, smaller, weaker, as though the light must travel farther to find you. You start to notice how the cold settles into everything. It isn't sharp, not yet. It's a steady presence, a slow claiming. The deck holds the chill even after sunrise. The barrels sweat with it. Your breath fogs faintly when you speak. The sea carries a pale shimmer, and when you touch the water, it feels denser than it should, as if touched by something ancient and unmoved. At night, the captain studies the sky in silence, marking positions on parchment that no longer make sense to you. The lines grow uncertain. The ink runs thin. You watch him fold each chart carefully, as if hiding a truth too fragile for daylight. The men no longer ask questions. They follow, and the sea continues. You lie on the deck sometimes, when the duties are done. The stars overhead blur slightly, trembling with the motion of the ship. You can't name them, and yet they seem to know you, their cold glow settling on your face like the faint brush of snow. The light feels indifferent. There's something ancient in it, something that doesn't care for human ambition or suffering. It feels older than prayer. The voices of the crew have grown quieter. The laughter that once punctuated the monotony has thinned into murmurs. Conversations trail off halfway through. You hear snippets, half-dreamed fears, fragments of songs no one finishes. The words don't matter anymore. The sea absorbs them before they reach the air. Sometimes you think the ocean listens. When the wind dies and the sails hang limp, you can almost hear it breathing. Slow, deliberate, enormous. The sound rises from beneath the hull, a low resonance that vibrates through the wood. It feels alive, patient, waiting. You can't say what for. The light of the stars reflects faintly on the water, breaking into tiny shards that ripple and fade. It's easy to lose focus staring at them. You start to imagine you're looking down into the sky rather than up at it, that the ship sails through two heavens, mirrored and endless, one above, one below. You're caught between them, suspended in quiet eternity. The cold deepens. It settles into your hands, your jaw, the spaces between breaths. When you move, it feels like dragging something invisible. The men huddle together at night, not for warmth, but for proof that they still exist. The sea offers no reflection anymore, only darkness, thick and opaque. The cook speaks of strange lights on the horizon. Green, he says, flickering like lanterns underwater. You go to look, but there's nothing, only the faint shimmer of starlight distorted by mist. Yet even when you see nothing, the idea stays with you. You start to notice faint glimmers in the corner of your vision, gone when you turn your head. Magellan's shadow grows longer with each night. He stands at the bow sometimes, alone, motionless, for hours. His silhouette merges with the mast, black against the starlight. You begin to think he might be drawing strength from the darkness, feeding on the cold itself. The men glance at him and look away quickly, afraid of what they might see if they stare too long. The ocean takes on new colours, not the deep blue you once knew, but layers of grey and silver, shades of iron and smoke. The waves move slower, as if dragging against something unseen. Even the foam feels different, thicker, clinging to the ship like hands reluctant to let go. Days become indistinguishable. Each sunrise bleeds into mist. Each night sinks into the same vast dark. The stars are your only companions, yet their constellations shift imperceptibly each evening. It feels like the world above is turning, while the one below stands still. The sky moves on. You remain. You dream differently now. When sleep comes, it isn't gentle. It arrives like fog, heavy, directionless. You dream of water without end, of faces blurred by starlight, of voices calling from somewhere deep and far away. In the dream, you always look up, but the stars keep changing places. When you wake, you aren't sure if you've truly left the dream at all. One evening, as the ship drifts under a pale crescent moon, you notice the air hums faintly. A vibration that isn't wind or wave. A tone low and steady, threading through the night. It comes from nowhere and everywhere. The men hear it too, but no one speaks. You all stand still, listening. It fades only when the first star falls, a tiny flare that vanishes before touching the horizon. You start to wonder how long you've been sailing beneath this new sky. The days are too alike to count. The sea no longer feels like a place you travel through. It feels like something you inhabit, endless and self-contained. A moving prison or perhaps a cradle. It's hard to tell the difference anymore. The stars watch in silence. Their light doesn't comfort. It judges nothing, blesses nothing. It simply exists, calm, eternal, unreachable. You imagine them as eyes of ancient gods, watching your small ship crawl across the black surface of their forgotten sea. One night, the captain orders the lanterns extinguished. The ship sinks into pure darkness. You can't see the men beside you. You can't see your hands. Only the stars remain, thousands of them, shimmering faintly, their reflections trembling in the water. The ship becomes invisible, a thought adrift in the void. For the first time, you feel the full shape of your insignificance. It isn't frightening. It's almost a relief. The constellations move above you, slow and deliberate. You realize they don't need to guide you. They've been watching this path long before any man dared to name it. The ship creaks softly, surrendering to their rhythm. The sea exhales, and the world drifts a little farther into stillness. You close your eyes and breathe in the air, cold, metallic, endless. The stars press against your eyelids, leaving faint ghost lights behind them. You can't tell if you're awake or dreaming anymore. Perhaps it doesn't matter. The voyage has no borders now. No end, no return. Only motion. Only the sound of water and the quiet turning of the sky. And somewhere, above or below, the stars shift again, tracing invisible paths over a world that has already forgotten its name. The sea has grown quieter. It moves without sound now, a vast sheet of colourless glass that hides its depths too well. The air feels thinner, as if the world itself were slowly running out of breath. You move slower too, not from caution, but from the heaviness that has begun to live inside your bones. The wind doesn't bring news anymore, it only brings itself. The biscuits have turned to powder. When you bite them, they dissolve into your tongue, like dust from the earth you left behind. The salted meat gleams faintly with rot, a grey sheen, slick and sour. You eat it anyway. Hunger no longer feels like pain. It's quieter now, a steady presence that hums just below thought. You chew because that's what the body demands. You swallow because it's what survival looks like, even when it no longer feels like living. The water has gone stale. It carries the taste of rust and patience, as though it too has been waiting too long to be used. You sip it carefully, pretending it still refreshes. Some of the men add vinegar to mask the taste, but that only makes it worse, sharper biting. You drink because there's nothing else, because thirst doesn't negotiate. The cook used to hum while he worked. He doesn't anymore. His fire burns smaller now, cautious and unwilling, as if afraid of being noticed. The air below deck smells of damp wood, of brine, of faint decay that clings to every surface. You can't escape it. It seeps into the ropes, into your clothes, into your sleep. Days pass without change, though the sun grows weaker with each one. Its light spills over the sea like something tired, unable to reach the surface fully. Shadows grow soft, indistinct. You've stopped trying to tell the hours apart. The bell rings, and you move. You don't think. Routine has become a kind of mercy. When the food is passed around, you take your share carefully, not because you're polite, but because everyone has learned to measure greed. The crew no longer speaks much during meals. The sound of chewing fills the silence, a slow, grim rhythm that feels older than speech. Occasionally, someone mutters a joke about boiling leather. No one laughs, but a few look down at their boots all the same. Your stomach has shrunk. You can feel it tightening each day, like a hand closing around itself. The hunger moves differently now, less urgent, more patient, spreading quietly through your chest and into your thoughts. It becomes a rhythm you can't ignore, a pulse that beats beneath every movement. When you sleep, you dream of colour, bread warm from the oven, meat rich and red, fruit that drips sweetness down your wrists. You wake to grey water, grey sky, grey faces. The men's voices have changed. They sound thinner, stretched, as if each word costs something. Laughter has become a ghost. You hear it sometimes, faint and brittle, the echo of what it used to be. Jokes circle the same dark corners. Food, madness, God. No one mentions home anymore. The word has lost its meaning out here, somewhere between hunger and horizon. You start to notice how your hands tremble when you tie the ropes, not from cold, from weakness. The muscles move slower now, reluctant. You hide it as best you can. Everyone does. To show how empty you've become feels dangerous, like revealing a wound that invites the knife. At night, the ship breathes with you. Its creaks have softened, its voice grown frail. You lie awake listening to it, the woods settling under the weight of the voyage. The stars above blur into one another, faint and cold. You can't tell if it's the fog in your eyes or the sky itself fading. Sometimes a man collapses quietly. No ceremony, no warning. Just a sound, a small hollow thud against the deck. The others carry him below without a word. You don't ask if he'll rise again. You know better now than to expect answers from a world this empty. You think about time differently these days. It no longer moves forward, it sinks, like an anchor, into dark water. You can feel it gathering weight, dragging the ship deeper into something you can't see. The ocean stretches endlessly, in every direction, the same dull skin of moving glass. It feels like being trapped inside a heartbeat that has forgotten how to stop. The smell of spoiled meat follows you everywhere. It hides in your clothes, clings to your hair. You grow used to it until you catch a moment of clean air, a rare breeze that smells of nothing, and the contrast makes you dizzy. You breathe deeper than you mean to, almost desperate. Then it's gone again, swallowed by the same invisible rot that defines your days. There's a strange kind of comfort in repetition. The same movements, the same labour, the same hollow meals. You begin to understand how people become ghosts while still alive, not through death but through sameness. The world becomes smaller, your body quieter. You move, you eat, you sleep, but the self begins to thin, like light stretched too far. You catch yourself talking to the sea sometimes, your voice barely a whisper. Not words exactly, more like sound, just to hear something human. The water doesn't answer, it never does, but it listens, always. You can feel it listening, patient and vast. The captain still appears on deck, his expression unreadable. He's thinner too, though his eyes haven't lost their edge. When he speaks, it feels like hearing a voice from another world, one that still remembers what purpose sounds like. The crew obeys without question, not from faith, but from the exhaustion of choice. One morning, you find a rat dead beside a barrel. The men gather around it silently, not out of disgust, but out of longing. Someone mutters a prayer. Someone else looks at the cook. The cook looks away. No one touches the rat, not yet. But you all think the same thing. A body is a body, and hunger is an old god that doesn't care for names. You feel ashamed for thinking it, but the shame doesn't stay. Hunger dissolves everything. Fear, pride, decency. It strips you clean until all that's left is need. You begin to understand how easily men become something else when the body forgets comfort. The sea doesn't punish, it simply reveals. When the biscuits finally run out, the cook scrapes the barrel for crumbs. You line up without hope, hands outstretched like beggars at a temple. He shakes his head before you reach him. The barrel is empty. The sound it makes when he taps it, hollow, final, echoes through the ship like a bell for the dead. That night, no one sleeps. The sea is still, too still. The air hangs heavy, tasting of metal and silence. Someone begins to pray softly, the words tumbling over one another, desperate and shapeless. Others join, their voices weaving into a low hum. It sounds less like faith and more like mourning. You close your eyes and imagine the land, any land. Grass underfoot, trees heavy with fruit, air that doesn't taste of salt. You can almost feel it, the solidness of it. But when you open your eyes, there's only the sea, endless and blank. The illusion slips away like water through fingers. Days merge into each other until the concept of day itself loses meaning. The sun is just a faint smudge in the sky. You've stopped counting meals, stopped marking time. You exist in slow motion, breath by breath, bite by bite, heartbeat by heartbeat. The cook begins boiling strips of canvas in salt water. No one jokes this time. The smell fills the deck, bitter and sour. You chew the boiled leather carefully, each bite a battle. It doesn't taste like food, but it gives your jaw something to do. The body confuses motion for sustenance. One of the men laughs while eating, a dry, cracked laugh that sounds closer to sobbing. You almost envy him. At least the sound reminds him he's still alive. Most of you have forgotten what that feels like. Hunger has changed you. It's not an intruder anymore. It's a companion. Quiet, persistent, faithful. It no longer asks. It simply stays. You move through your tasks in a fog, the world narrowing to the space between one swallow and the next. The ship carries you onward, though onward means nothing now. The sea remains the same, the sky unchanging. Only your bodies shrink, your faces hollow, your eyes deepening into something that reflects more than it reveals. And through it all, the ocean keeps whispering, that slow, rhythmic murmur that fills the gaps between your thoughts. You start to think it isn't mocking you. It's waiting. For what, you don't know. You fall asleep one night with the taste of salt on your lips and wake to the same taste again. Nothing changes. The stars remain where they were, and the ship keeps moving through nothingness. Hunger continues, slow and patient, as eternal as the sea. And in that stillness, you begin to understand what it means to endure, not to conquer, not to survive, but simply to continue breathing while the world around you forgets how. The sea changes before you notice it. Its colour darkens, deepening into something more solid, as though the water itself has grown tired of being fluid. The air thickens too, scented with earth and rot, faint then stronger, until it fills your lungs like memory. You stand at the rail squinting through mist, and there it is, land. It doesn't announce itself. There's no line between ocean and earth, only the slow emergence of shape. Trees rising out of fog, dark and unmoving. Their reflections trembling on the surface of the water. The men gather beside you, their faces gaunt and unreadable. The sight should stir joy, but it doesn't. You all stare, as if the world has grown an extra limb, and you're unsure whether to be amazed or afraid. The forest waits in silence. It looks untouched, unbothered, unwilling to welcome. The leaves shimmer faintly under a pale sun, and the shore is marked by thick mud that gleams like oil. The sound of the sea meeting it is soft and unwilling, like two things forced into contact that never wanted to meet. Someone mutters that it looks like the edge of the world. Someone else says, maybe it is. No one laughs. The wind carries the smell of vegetation and decay, a sharp, wet greenness that feels too alive after the staleness of the ship. You breathe it in anyway. It burns a little, reminding you that your lungs still remember how to want more than salt air. Magellan stands at the bow. He doesn't move, doesn't speak. His gaze fixes on the shore, as though reading something written there that no one else can see. The men whisper about what might lie beyond the tree line. Gold, giants, new gods, or worse, none at all. You say nothing. You only watch the fog breathe across the water, folding over itself like a living thing. The ship slows. The sails hang loose, exhausted. The creak of the rigging echoes strangely against the trees. You hear birds, distant, strange cries that don't sound like any you've known. Their calls seem to come from the very air, not from throats. The sound lingers, metallic and beautiful in its indifference. A boat is lowered into the water. The oars dip in silence, each stroke careful, as if afraid of waking something. You watch the men move toward the shore, their bodies small against the vast stillness. When they reach the mud, they pause. No one steps forward. For a long time, they just stand there, shapes in the mist, part of the scenery. Eventually, one of them takes a step. The others follow. From the deck, you can see them disappear into the trees. Their shapes vanish quickly, swallowed by the green. The sound of their movement fades, replaced by the low murmur of insects and the sigh of leaves rubbing against each other. You keep watching, waiting for them to return. Time stretches. The tide moves in small, slow gestures, as though reluctant to leave. When the boat comes back, it carries nothing new. Just the men, eyes distant, hands empty. They speak quietly to the captain, and he nods once, his expression unchanged. The words pass among the crew, soft, confused, carried by curiosity rather than urgency. There were people, they say, tall, painted, quiet. They didn't speak, didn't flee. They only watched from the trees. And when one of the sailors lifted a hand in greeting, they turned and melted away into the green, soundless. Night comes quickly. The forest glows faintly in the moonlight, the leaves reflecting silver, the trunks black as pitch. Fires are lit on deck, small and controlled. You sit near one, the warmth faint against the damp air. The men speak in low voices, their faces orange in the flame. The talk drifts from wonder to superstition. Someone says the forest moves at night, that he saw shadows where there were none. Someone else claims he heard laughter, faint but human. No one argues. You tilt your head back and look at the stars. They are wrong here. Too many, too sharp, arranged in patterns that feel unfamiliar. The sky itself seems larger, stretched thin over this unmarked place. You trace the constellations you once knew, but they don't fit anymore. The heavens have redrawn themselves, and you no longer belong to them. When you close your eyes, the sound of the forest stays with you. It has its own rhythm, a heartbeat that moves through roots and leaves. You dream of walking beneath those trees, the ground soft, the air wet against your skin. You dream of eyes watching from the dark, not cruelly, just with quiet knowing. When you wake, you feel as though you've forgotten something important, something the forest tried to tell you, and you failed to understand. The next morning, fog lies thick across the water, a pale curtain that blurs everything. The ship feels smaller in it, adrift in whiteness. You can hear the forest but not see it. Branches creak faintly. Somewhere a bird screams once, then stops. The men move slower than usual, their eyes flicking toward the shore. The silence feels heavier than hunger ever did. Magellan orders another landing. This time, more men go. You're among them. The air grows heavier as you near the land, filled with the smell of sap and mud. The oars make soft, wet sounds that blend with your breath. When your boots touch the ground, it gives slightly, sinking under your weight. The mud clings to you as if reluctant to let go. The forest looms ahead, dense and alive. You step into it, and the world changes. The air no longer moves. The light filters through leaves in green fragments. Every sound feels magnified. The crack of a branch, the scrape of cloth, the heartbeat in your ears. Insects hum in constant rhythm. You walk carefully, though you don't know why. The place feels sentient, aware of each step you take. There are signs of life, huts of woven reeds, the remnants of a fire, bones cleaned neatly and stacked, but no people. Only the trace of their presence. The warmth gone, but the shape remaining. You run your fingers along the bark of a tree, marked with red pigment. The pattern makes no sense to you. It isn't meant to. When the men speak, their voices sound wrong here. Too loud, too sharp. The forest seems to recoil from them. You understand, suddenly, why the people watched in silence. To speak in a place like this feels intrusive. You begin to feel it too. The pull to quiet, the urge to vanish into the green. Something moves between the trees. You catch it only for a moment. A shape, tall and slender, gone before your eyes adjust. You look around. The others saw it too, but no one moves. The forest swallows the moment whole, leaving nothing but stillness. When you return to the shore, the captain is waiting. You tell him there was nothing. He nods, unsurprised. Orders are given. The ship will sail on at dawn. The men grumble softly, but obey. None of you look back toward the forest. It doesn't feel right to. That night the fog thickens until it seems to press against your skin. The sea barely moves, as if holding its breath. You lie awake listening to it, waiting for some sound. The crack of a branch, the whisper of movement. But there's nothing. Only the slow creak of wood and the faint hum of your pulse. When dawn comes, the fog lifts enough to show the coastline fading behind you. The trees recede into distance, swallowed by morning light. You watch until they disappear completely, until the sea reclaims the horizon. The men speak quietly about what they saw. Some claim to have glimpsed idols carved into rock. Others say they saw nothing but fog. The truth feels irrelevant. What matters is the leaving, that slow retreat from something that didn't care whether you came or went. The ship moves on, its sails catching a thin wind. The water ahead is pale blue, smooth as glass. Behind you, the world folds in on itself again, unmarked, untouched, already forgetting your presence. As the coastline fades, a strange thought drifts through your mind. Maybe maps aren't for finding places, but for naming the unknown. Maybe the world only becomes real when you draw lines on it. And maybe this place, the edge of everything you've known, is better left without lines at all. You stand at the railing until the fog swallows the last hint of land. The men begin their work in silence. The ropes tighten, the sails shift, and the ship groans softly as it turns toward the open sea once more. The horizon stretches ahead, endless and pale. The air grows lighter, thinner. You breathe deeply, trying to catch the scent of the forest, still lingering in your lungs, but it's gone. Replaced once again by salt, wood, and the faint, unchanging taste of distance. You close your eyes. The world hums around you. The steady rhythm of water, wood and wind. The forest fades behind you like a dream you were never meant to remember. Ahead, the sea waits, vast, indifferent and quiet, as if daring you to keep believing there's still more to find. The sea has grown narrow, and so has time. You stand near the bow, your breath catching in the cold, like smoke that refuses to rise. Around you, the water has changed its voice. It no longer sings in deep, patient rhythms. It mutters low and broken, pressed between cliffs of stone and ice. The ship groans with each gust of wind, as if the wood itself knows this passage was never meant for men. You had thought the ocean infinite. Now it feels like a throat, closing. The strait twists before you, its edges clawing into the fog. The world narrows into a corridor of fear, the unknown pressing from both sides. The wind cuts like a blade drawn across skin, and your hands, stiff with salt and cold, no longer feel like yours. Every rope, every knot, every pull is slower now. The deck is rimmed with frost. The The barrels you once counted with steady hands are swollen, cracked, and leaking brine. The sea drinks what you once thought was yours. The captain does not shiver. His coat snaps in the wind like a flag that will not bow. You watch him from a distance, as you always do, his silhouette against the pale, endless white of morning. Magellan seems made for this silence, this cruelty. You wonder if he feels it too, the weight of this place, where even sound freezes before reaching another ear. No one speaks much anymore. Words have become like rations, spent carefully, measured out. The men's faces have turned grey, their eyes hollowed by too many dawns that look exactly the same. You can't remember when the sun last felt warm. The horizon no longer burns gold, it burns nothing at all. Just a dull smear of light that offers no promise. You once believed the sea was alive, full of hidden creatures and secret depths. But here it feels dead, a mirror for your own exhaustion. Even the gulls have vanished, only the wind remains, relentless, unkind, whispering through the rigging like a prayer no one believes in anymore. When the storm comes, it does not arrive with thunder or rage. It arrives quietly, a curtain of sleet that turns the air into glass. The sails stiffen, the ropes crack. You move with the others, numb, half blind, shouting without hearing your own voice. Each wave is a hand rising to pull the ship backward. The mast bends but does not break. Not yet. Night falls without darkness, just a thicker grey. You tie yourself to the railing because that is what the older sailors do, and you've stopped questioning why. The deck tilts, the cold bites, and for a moment, as the ship lurches into the black, you think of home. Not as a place, but as a warmth your body still remembers. A man slips that night. His name doesn't matter. You hear the splash, the brief cry swallowed by wind, and then nothing. No one moves to the edge. The sea takes its due. Silence returns heavier than before. By morning, the ropes are sheathed in ice so clear it looks like glass blown by unseen hands. You run your palm along it and feel nothing. Your fingers have forgotten the language of touch. Everything has turned to ritual. The scraping of frost, the pulling of lines, the chewing of stale biscuit that splinters in your mouth like bone. You've learned not to think too far ahead. Time moves differently here. It stretches thin, loses its shape. The days fold into one another until they no longer matter. You measure them instead by small things, the creak that changes in pitch, the breath of wind that feels a little less cruel, the faint glow that tells you the sun still exists somewhere beyond the fog. Sometimes at night, when the ship drifts slower through the channel, you lie awake below deck. The wood above you moans softly, like a living creature dreaming in its sleep. You listen for that sound because it reminds you you're still moving, even if you don't know where. You think about the maps, those sheets of paper drawn by hands that never felt this cold. Their lines are clean, confident, untouched by salt or fear. Somewhere on one of those maps, this place doesn't yet exist. You are part of the ink that will make it real. The thought brings no pride, only a quiet ache. You wonder if being first to suffer something makes it noble, or simply foolish. Magellan's voice cuts through the wind some nights, sharp and certain. You don't understand how he still believes. In direction, in destiny, in something beyond this endless grey. But belief has become a kind of heat. You borrow what you can from it, just enough to keep moving. There's talk of turning back, whispers passed in the dark, muttered behind barrels, beneath breath. You don't join them, not because you disagree, but because the words themselves feel too heavy. Hope and rebellion sound the same here, both cost too much. Then comes a day when the wind stops, just stops. The stillness is worse than any storm. The ship hangs in the water, like an insect trapped in glass. The men look at one another, as if waiting for the world to start again. You can hear everything now. The faint drip of melted ice, the sigh of a man asleep, the small creak of your own boots shifting. It's unbearable. You stare at the horizon, half expecting it to move. It doesn't. The world is silent. The world is still. You wonder if this is how death begins, not with a scream, but with the quiet refusal of motion. When the wind returns, it feels like forgiveness. The sails swell, the ropes tighten, and the ship stirs again. The men breathe as if waking from a dream, but the relief is brief. The cold remains, the hunger deepens, and the sky continues to hang low and colourless. You realise something then. It isn't the sea you fear anymore. It's the waiting, the slow erosion of what makes you human. You have become part of the ship, another sound in its chorus of creaks and sighs. The thought both comforts and frightens you. Days or weeks, you can't tell. Later, the cliffs begin to widen. The wind smells different. The water turns from steel grey to something almost blue. You feel it before you see it. The subtle shift, the loosening of the air. The strait is ending. The world, impossibly, continues. No one cheers, no one dares. The ocean beyond lies wide and bright, a mirror stretching to the edge of imagination. But you know better than to call it freedom. You've learned that every horizon only hides another kind of confinement. As the ship glides toward open water, you look back once. The mountains fade into mist, the narrow path swallowed by distance. It feels like leaving a grave you built for yourself. The cold lingers in your bones, refusing to thaw. You close your eyes and let the wind find your face. It's softer now, almost kind. The taste of salt on your lips is the same as it has always been. Bitter, endless, necessary. Somewhere behind you the strait sighs. Ahead the unknown waits, not as a promise, but as a question that no one aboard dares to answer. You breathe slowly. The ropes creak, the sails fill, and the ship moves on, carrying your hunger, your silence, your fading sense of self into the next stretch of sea, where even the stars will change their names again. The strait disappears behind you, swallowed by fog and memory. The wind has softened to a faint hum, and the waves move with a languid patience that makes your arms ache from the weight of doing nothing. The ship floats, a small wooden thought adrift on a vast sheet of glass that stretches in every direction. There is no horizon to reach. There is only the blue, unbroken, unyielding, merciless in its stillness. Days lose their names here. You no longer know which sun is rising or setting, only that the light shifts imperceptibly across the water. The ocean is so calm it has forgotten how to move, and you fear that you might forget as well. Each breath is an effort against the monotony. Even the waves seem lazy in their endless repetition, like tired ghosts swimming just beneath the surface. The men drift in silence. Some sit on barrels, staring into the water as though it will speak if given enough attention. Some pace the deck, hands empty, shoulders rounded beneath coats, stiff with salt and cold. They speak little, but when they do, the words are soft, uncertain, often half-formed. You listen, counting syllables, trying to remember what conversation once sounded like. Most of it dissolves in the air before it reaches you. Food has become another form of ritual. You chew slowly, mechanically, tasting salt, rot and fatigue, but little else. The cook moves among the barrels with quiet determination, scraping every bit of old biscuit, measuring water with exacting care. His face is lined with shadows. He does not complain. No one does. You have all learned that complaint only sharpens the edges of hunger, makes the cold more cruel. Time bends here. A day stretches into another. Hours fold into themselves. You start to feel the ship's movement as part of your own body. The slight rocking becomes the rhythm of your pulse. The push of water against hull, the cadence of your thoughts. Sleep is shallow, fragmentary, measured in moments that rise and fall with the tides. Even dreaming has slowed. You remember colour only vaguely. The brown of old biscuit, the grey of salted meat, the pale gleam of rope slick with brine. You watch the water and sometimes you see faces there. Not yours, not really, but faces that echo across the mirror surface, pale and indistinct. They smile, they frown, they watch. You cannot tell. You lean closer and they vanish. Sometimes it is a man from the crew, flattened and stretched by the reflection. Sometimes it is a stranger, someone you might have known before the voyage, long ago, in another world. All of them fade like rumour. The air has its own texture here, not sharp or bracing, not wet with spray or soot, but a slow, dense calm that fills every corner of the deck. It presses against your skin, your lungs, your thoughts. Breathing becomes an act of patience. You notice every small sound, a rope creaking, a nail straining, the faintest sigh of wood settling under weight. They all seem louder now, precious for their difference from total silence. The captain walks the deck with his usual quiet authority. Magellan seems unaffected by the monotony. He paces, his gaze distant, tracing lines in the water that do not exist. You watch him, understanding that belief here has a different meaning. Not hope, not trust, but the act of continuing to move, even when the world does not. The men talk sometimes of what lies ahead. They whisper of islands, of trade winds, of lands where food might exist in abundance. You listen, but the words feel hollow, insubstantial, drifting across the water without weight. They vanish before reaching you, like mist over the mirror of the ocean. When a bird appears, a small speck, a fleeting shadow in the sky, it brings a surge of sensation you cannot name. Men point, laugh softly, gesture with renewed energy, but it is brief. The bird passes, and the ocean resumes its slow, merciless calm. You remember the forests at the edge of the map, the strait with its punishing wind. You recall the ice, the hunger, the faint scent of mud and leaves, and then it is gone. Only the blue remains. The ropes are wet beneath your hands, not with water, but with condensation that gathers from the endless, slow fog. You run your fingers along them to feel texture, something real. The deck beneath your feet has lost its familiarity. Each plank is a surface to tread lightly upon. You measure the distance between yourself and the rail. You measure the distance between yourself and your own memory. Sleep comes and leaves in pieces. Dreams are shallow, fragmentary. You dream of cliffs, of forests, of mouths filled with fresh food. You awaken to salt, to blue, to the slow, unbroken rhythm of the ship. The same ropes, the same barrels, the same quiet murmur of men who have grown thinner, quieter, older, without years passing. You wake and wonder if you are still the same person who left Seville, or if the sea has slowly written over your name. Conversations, when they happen, drift into absurdity. The men make observations about clouds, the colour of the sky, the shape of waves. They joke quietly about things that cannot be true, about the ship itself, about the stars above that have long since shifted into unknown patterns. The laughter is soft, almost reverent, more a sound of recognition that someone is still alive than of mirth. Time has hollowed the crew, hollowed the ship, hollowed you. You move because the body moves, speak because the tongue moves, breathe because lungs are expected to, not because you feel the necessity of it. Even hope has taken on a rhythm, slow, methodical, predictable. You count days by how the wind shifts, by the faint difference in hue between sky and water, by the pull of salt on your lips. You notice small details with growing intensity. A rope frayed in a subtle pattern, a nail loose in the deck, the sheen of frost forming when the air cools at night. Each observation is a lifeline to the world you can still touch. Each sense stretched to its limit, finding meaning in what is almost nothing. The horizon curves but does not end. You lean over the rail, watching the mirror-smooth water, trying to see beyond the reflection. You touch the surface with your fingers. Cold, infinite, unresponsive. Your own face appears, grey and familiar, and fades instantly. The men beside you are shadows, nearly indistinguishable from the ship itself. Sometimes you imagine land, not real land, a memory or a story from another life. You imagine forests, rivers, people, animals. You see them clearly for a moment, in vivid colour, in movement, and then the blue returns, swallowing the vision, leaving only the monotone calm. You exhale and wonder if this is what eternity must feel like. Magellan appears at the bow one evening, the wind faint, the water perfectly still. He points silently to the horizon, then lowers his hand. You follow the gesture, but there is nothing to see. Stillness reigns, and yet the crew obeys, adjusting sails, securing ropes, moving as if the invisible hand of direction still exists, even when it does not. You realize that the voyage has transformed. It is no longer about reaching someplace, discovering a coast, or returning home. It is about endurance, about inhabiting a world that refuses change, about measuring life not in distance travelled, but in breaths taken against infinite stillness. The stars above shift imperceptibly over weeks. They are faint, unfamiliar, too high to reach. You chart them in your mind, name them silently, knowing the names are worthless. Still you name them, still you move through the blue void beneath them, one small human among countless miles of unbroken water. Occasionally, the sound of a gull pierces the calm, startling, almost unbearable in its rarity. The crew murmurs softly, and the ship creaks in acknowledgement. A single voice in the quiet. Then silence returns, complete, infinite, relentless. You stand at the rail and watch your reflection blur into the water, the world narrowing into this small space where time bends and memory fades. Even yourself begins to feel like a rumour, a whispered echo of the person who signed his name on paper in Seville, a body afloat on endless blue, sustained by routine, by ritual, by the necessity of doing something rather than nothing. The ship drifts on, the blue stretches further than eyes can follow. The men are quiet, as you are quiet. The wind hums through the rigging in a tone that has become familiar, a lullaby, a reminder that the world continues even when the self recedes. You breathe, you move, you survive. And above it all, the unbroken sea waits, endless, impartial, and patient, holding everything and everyone. In its slow, merciless rhythm, the blue stretches endlessly, and then it ends. A dark line rises from the horizon, blurred at first, then clearer, until the trees appear as a wall of green, heavy with promise. You breathe differently here, as though the air itself has softened, warmed, and for a moment the tension in your shoulders eases. The ocean's monotony breaks with a gentle slap of waves against sand, a rhythm that does not demand constant attention. The men are alert but quieter than usual. There is a strange reverence in their movements, cautious excitement disguised as patience. You lower a rope, watching the shore approach, and notice the smell. Rich, wet earth, sweet fruit, smoke from distant fires. It feels almost like home, though you cannot name the memory it recalls. When the small boats reach the sand, the people are there, waiting. They are not hostile, not openly, at least. Their eyes are curious, calm, and their voices sound like music made for the sun. You trade trinkets, bits of metal, glass, beads, for food, bananas heavy with sweetness, fish still glistening, water that tastes fresh enough to make your stomach ache in remembered longing. The men eat slowly, almost ritualistically, savouring the reprieve. You do too. The forest behind them is dense, green and alive in a way that feels almost aggressive after months at sea. You notice details, the curve of a leaf, the way light filters through the canopy, the faint, constant hum of insects. The people move among it effortlessly, like ghosts that belong to the trees. They show you the paths, the small shelters, the piles of coconuts, the nets stretched between palms. Everything here seems measured, careful, yet inexhaustible. You feel something strange, relief. For the first time in months, perhaps since leaving the strait, the world does not press upon you. The sun warms your face, the breeze lifts your hair, and you feel the steady, grounded presence of earth beneath your boots. You notice how thin the line is between wonder and forgetfulness, between appreciation and longing for what will vanish the moment the ship calls again. The men trade quietly. Some offer small gifts, others exchange smiles, all of them silent witnesses to the unspoken truth. The sea does not forgive. The food, the warmth, the soft laughter, it is temporary. You sense it in the way the wind shifts, in the subtle glance of a tree bending toward the ocean, in the quiet patience of the water. The ship waits, always, even as you eat and breathe. Part of you scans the horizon, the distant swell of waves beyond the bay. You imagine the ropes, the sails, the rigging, stretching taut against the wind. You imagine the crew, still aboard, moving in their slow rhythm. You remember the hunger, the cold, the endless blue, and you realize that this moment of reprieve is a thin layer of warmth over the endless weight of the voyage. The people speak to you, their words foreign but melodic. You learn their names slowly, and they learn yours, or at least something you offer in place of it. You feel gratitude, but it is tangled with suspicion, an instinct born from months at sea. You have learned that kindness can be as fragile as bread in a storm. You measure every gesture, every smile, as though testing whether it will endure when the ship returns. The food nourishes you, but more than that, it reminds you of what was lost to the monotony of open water, strength, colour, and the simple mechanics of satisfaction. You chew slowly, noticing texture, taste, the way each swallow slides down your throat, grounding you. You remember hunger, not as absence, but as contrast. The emptiness you carried before this place feels sharper now, a void you cannot entirely fill. Some of the men wander the shore. They run their fingers over sand, over bark, over nets left in the sun. They talk softly, trying to name what they see, as if language can capture the gentle geometry of these islands. You notice how their voices are lighter, how their movements have a rhythm they lost months ago. The ship, suspended behind the bay, is still. It waits silently, patient and insistent. You stand at the edge of the forest, watching a man offer a bead to a child, and you see something in the gesture. Hope, or at least its reflection. For a moment, the voyage feels less like punishment. You let yourself imagine the ship's sails folding in, the sea calming, a life built on abundance instead of endurance. But the fantasy is thin. You know the ship waits, and it will take you again. It always does. The forest is alive with small sounds, a bird's trill, the rustle of leaves, the faint drip of water from canopy to ground. You follow a path inland briefly, tracing it with your eyes and your feet, but you cannot linger. The ship calls you back, and with each step toward the boat, the forest recedes, becomes less solid, less permanent. You carry the memory, but the weight of it is already tinged with loss. The people show you fruit you have never seen before, fish prepared with skill and care, water drawn from hidden streams. You taste, and for the first time, sustenance feels like more than survival. But even as you eat, you cannot ignore the ropes, the sails, the faint creak of the ship against the tide. Your body has learned the rhythm of the voyage. You cannot forget it, even in moments of abundance. You trade names for smiles and trinkets for food. You listen to laughter that carries without effort. And yet, every moment is tempered by memory. The blue endless sea, the strait's cold fingers, the hunger that never fully leaves. You understand that the kindness here is borrowed. From the sun, from the earth, from a world that has nothing to do with you. It is real, yes, but it is also temporary. The men return to the ship reluctantly, their hands full, their faces heavy with unspoken longing. You follow, feeling the tug of home and duty alike. The forest recedes behind you, green swallowed by mist and distance. You hear the laughter fade, the air return to salt and wind. The promise of warmth is gone, replaced once again by the rhythm of rope and sail, the pull of the ship across water that does not forgive. You stand on deck, holding your handfuls of fruit and fresh water, and watch the island shrink into the horizon. Its kindness lingers faintly in your mouth and throat, a memory that tastes like sun and mud and hope. But the ship waits, always. The ropes creak, the sails catch wind, the ocean hums beneath the hull. You breathe the last scent of the island deeply, knowing that this reprieve, however sweet, is already behind you. As the sails fill and the bow tilts toward open water, you feel the weight of both the gift and the debt. The island was kind, but the voyage is relentless. You step back from the railing, noticing the ropes under your hands, the deck beneath your boots, the horizon stretching endless and blue. The forest fades behind you, the laughter swallowed, the fruit already part of your body, its sweetness fleeting. You close your eyes, you can almost hear the voices of the island, the murmur of wind through trees, the soft ripple of water on sand, and then it is gone. Only the ship, only the sea, only the endless rhythm remains. You move forward because you must, guided by routine, by ritual, by the pull of the world that refuses pause. And in the quiet, you understand again. The ocean forgives nothing. Every kindness is borrowed, every warmth temporary. And still, you endure, carrying memory like a fragile cargo, trading smiles for sustenance, and continuing into the blue that stretches without end. The sun rises pale and listless over the endless blue. You notice it because the light brushes your face differently today, softer but empty, as if the sky itself has realized something has been lost. A message reaches the crew quietly, carried by whispers that seem to trail off before they can fully land. Magellan is dead. The words arrive not as shock but as inevitability. You do not flinch. You do not cry. You only feel the emptiness behind them, a subtle folding inward, as though a hinge has rusted in your chest. It is distant, like hearing that a star has died light years away. The light will reach you eventually, but in this moment, it is nothing more than a quiet shift in the world. The ship rocks gently, unmindful of human grief. It does not slow or stop. The wind passes through the sails without hesitation. The water laps against the hull with its usual patience, ignorant and indifferent. The ropes groan faintly, the wood sighs. The vessel moves forward because it knows no other way. The sea does not mourn, does not pause, and neither does the ship. The men react in small ways, private and muted. One rubs his hands together, stiffened by cold and thought. Another stares at the horizon, mouth slightly open, as if the distance could speak. There are no orders, no ceremony. Life aboard continues in quiet, mechanical steps. You notice how habit and repetition carry more authority than the captain ever could. The maps feel thinner now. Every line seems uncertain, every marking less meaningful. You trace your finger along the edge of a coast, a river, a bay, and it feels like running along paper that will tear if pressed too hard. The ocean beyond these fragile outlines stretches infinite, indifferent, unbroken. You understand that the map, once a guide, is now a reminder of your smallness, of how little any human hand can contain the world. You move among the men, observing. Some whisper about what comes next. Who will lead? How will the voyage continue? There is no urgency, no panic, only a slow, heavy sense of adaptation. Leadership is a shape, a shadow. It can be assumed, delegated, survived without. The ship carries this truth in its timbers. The men carry it in their bones. You carry it in your breath. Each day blurs as it always has, but now a subtle emptiness has crept into the routine. The same scraping of ropes, the same counting of barrels, the same careful measurement of water and biscuit. All these actions continue, yet they feel lighter in one sense and heavier in another. Lighter because the obligation to follow a voice of command has vanished. Heavier because the responsibility of survival falls equally on every hand, every mind, every exhausted body. You see the officers confer quietly in corners, maps spread across barrels, lines traced in careful fingers. They speak softly, their words measured, weighed against the horizon. Decisions are made slowly, cautiously, as if each choice might be swallowed by the sea or rejected by fate itself. The men obey without question, though obedience now feels different, a shared acknowledgement of necessity rather than loyalty. At night, you lie awake on the deck, listening to the ship breathe. Its creaks are deeper now, almost mournful. The wind hums against rigging. The faint slap of waves against hull is rhythmic and unchanging. The world has not slowed for Magellan's death. The constellations shift above, unfamiliar, cold. Some stars vanish behind clouds, others burn faintly, distant and indifferent. You stare at them until your eyes blur, trying to remember the constellations you once knew, before the voyage, before so much had been lost. The men speak in fragments sometimes. Names, dates, memories that surface and vanish as quickly as they appear. You listen more than you speak. There is no one to answer your thoughts. The ship has no mouth. The ocean does not care for conversation, and you are left in a kind of quiet that is almost unbearable, a calm that presses in all directions, heavy and patient. Even hunger takes on a new tone now. It is not sharper, not more urgent, only longer, more persistent, curling around you like the fog that sometimes descends at dawn. You chew stale biscuit and salted meat with a mechanical precision that has become almost meditative. You notice every texture, every grain, every residue of salt. Food is sustenance, yes, but also an anchor, a reminder that your body still exists, even if the captain no longer does. The ship moves as if led by invisible hands. Sails catch the wind without complaint, ropes tighten without ceremony. Planks shift underfoot with the same subtle groan as always. You realize the voyage no longer belongs to a man, but to the ocean, the wind and the ship itself. You belong too, not as master, not as follower, but as participant in this endless, indifferent rhythm. Sometimes you see Magellan in glimpses, in the creak of the mast, in the firm shadow cast by a sail, in the silent authority of a man adjusting a rope with care. His absence is present. The world has not changed, yet it is profoundly altered. Every decision, every motion, every breath acknowledges what has been lost without acknowledgement. You dream occasionally, brief and fragmented. You see him walking the deck, pointing silently to some distant land, or standing at the bow against wind and spray. You wake and he is gone. The men move silently, shadows across the water, ghosts of patience and routine. The maps remain thin and fragile. The ocean stretches beyond them. You begin to notice the weight of silence in ways you hadn't before. Conversations are lighter, sounds sharper, gestures more deliberate. Even laughter seems a little unreal, a small rebellion against the quiet that wants to envelop everything. And yet you laugh softly sometimes, almost involuntarily, at nothing at all, a private acknowledgement that the human heart endures, even in absence. The horizon shifts, pale and endless. You lean against the railing and trace the water with your eyes, noting the subtle movements, the quiet swell of distant waves, the reflection of stars in the faint night glow. The ship continues, guided by no one in particular, yet moving with the certainty of purpose that is its own. You touch the ropes, cold and rough, and feel the rhythm in them, the small pulse of life carried across fibre and timber. You note the barrels, the masts, the sails, all the small mechanical elements that insist upon continuity, each one a thread connecting the living to the ship to the sea, and the sea to a world that will continue even after the voyage ends, even after all names are forgotten. Sometimes you think of the men who have already vanished, swallowed by distance, disease, or the mercilessness of the elements. You think of the ones who remain, their faces lined with exhaustion and quiet recognition. You notice how each man moves carefully, slowly, as if his body has learned to measure every action in the long, thin arc of survival. And you too measure yourself. Each breath, each heartbeat, each blink of your eyes against sun or fog. You are aware of the thinness of your presence, a rumour of a person drifting across endless water. You are aware that the maps feel thinner now because the ink cannot contain the distance you have travelled, nor the absence you carry. The ship continues, the ocean continues, the sky continues, life aboard continues, muted, measured, mechanical. And somewhere inside you, quiet and persistent, is the knowledge that you move forward, not because of a man's command, but because the voyage itself demands it, because the ropes will fray, the sails will tear, and still the ship will insist on progress, because the sea remains indifferent, eternal, and unchanging. You breathe, you move, you endure, and in the spaces between creek and sigh, wind and water, you carry the memory of a captain who no longer walks among you, a memory that is both weight and compass, both absence and guide, both sorrow and strange unspoken comfort. The maps are thinner, the horizon stretches infinite, and the ship moves onward, always onward, across a world that does not pause, across a sea that neither mourns nor celebrates. The ocean begins to feel smaller, not in reality, but in perception. Each wave, each swell, each stretch of horizon has become intimately known, and yet unfamiliar. Like a corridor you have walked so many times that its corners have subtly shifted. You recognize shapes that could be islands, coasts, or clouds, and yet they are not what you remember. Familiarity has turned strange, and every glance reminds you that the world continues without memory. You watch the sun rise over water that should feel welcoming, but does not. Its light is pale, as though exhausted by the long voyage. It casts shadows across the deck, long and thin, exaggerating every rope, every plank, every worn hand that touches them. The warmth is real, but it no longer carries comfort. Even the sun participates in this slow erasure, circling in its rhythm above a world that has circled you in return. The men move quietly, their motions smaller, almost cautious. Some pause to study the horizon, tracing shapes and colours with eyes that have long learned the futility of naming anything. You do the same, letting the gaze drift lazily, noting the subtle shifts. In colour, the way the clouds gather like smoke from a fire that is always burning but never noticed. You realise that you no longer look for land. You look for differences, for small signs that the sea itself has not yet claimed everything. The maps are thinner, frayed at the edges, and the lines that once marked coasts and currents feel fragile under your fingertips. You run a finger along one, tracing a bay or inlet, and imagine how it must have seemed before the voyage. Confident and precise. Now the lines are suggestions. Reminders that no map can hold the living world, and no memory can fully preserve the self that left months ago. You remember Seville, the harbour, the smell of tar, the voices of people who thought this journey would be glorious. It exists now, more as sensation than as place. You feel it in the ache of your muscles, the taste of salt in your mouth, the rhythm of the ship beneath your boots. The city is behind you, but in a sense, you can never return. It has been rewritten by the water, by distance, by the unceasing monotony of movement. The crew moves like shadows, silhouettes against the faint shimmer of water. Some adjust sails, some tie knots, some scrape ice or clean decks, with the slow precision of ritual. You move with them, one small cog in a vast, indifferent machine. Words are few. When spoken, they carry the weight of observation, of noting that a rope is frayed or a barrel leaking. Conversation has been replaced by necessity, and necessity has replaced memory. Food continues to be a measured rhythm. Biscuit crumbles in your hands, water tastes faintly metallic, salted meat is chewed slowly, deliberately. You notice its texture, the residue of months at sea, and the faint sense of endurance it carries. Eating has become both survival and meditation, a small assertion of existence in a world that has quietly stripped everything else away. The ocean shifts subtly. Currents that were once predictable are now mysterious. The wind blows in directions that seem wrong, yet the sails respond with inevitability. You notice this and think about the rhythm of control and surrender, of effort and futility. Each action is small, precise, necessary. Each breath is measured against the slow, patient unfolding of days. At night, the stars are unrecognizable. Constellations you thought you knew have moved, or perhaps it is your eyes that have changed. You trace lines in the sky, naming shapes and figures that will vanish with the next cloud, the next blink. You remember old constellations, the ones you learned before leaving home, but their order is gone. Even the heavens participate in the quiet rewriting of your world. The ship creaks as always, a living thing that carries memory of storms and calm alike. You touch the ropes and planks, feeling the grain of wood, the roughness of fibre. It is reassuring, in a muted way, to notice texture, to sense continuity in something tangible. Everything else, people, maps, memories, is thin, fragile, fading into distance and repetition. Sometimes you catch a reflection in the water. Your face appears briefly, grey and unrecognizable. You stare, hoping for recognition, and then it vanishes. You are a rumour of a person now, carried by wind and wave, measured in motion and breath rather than in memory or story. The mirror of the ocean does not honour the self. It only shows what persists. The men talk in whispers sometimes. They speak of islands glimpsed, currents traced, winds predicted. The conversation is quiet, almost reverent. You listen without comment, aware that speech is another way of marking time, another small ritual to impose order on a world that refuses it. Silence is heavier, but also familiar. You have learned to move within it, to measure your existence against its slow, unyielding rhythm. You pass places that resemble those left months ago, and yet they are altered. Cliffs appear in shapes that mimic memories. Rivers bend in patterns that recall home. Forests rise like ghosts of greenery you once knew. But nothing is truly the same. You realize that you have traveled the world and returned, but it is the world that has circled you, not the other way around. Everything you were is faint, faint enough to dissolve in the blue, the wind, the salt. The ship presses onward, carrying you toward home, or merely onward. Each day folds into the next with subtle differences. A rope frayed here, a barrel cracked there, a man coughing softly. You notice these details because they are all that remain tangible. Life continues in increments, measured by effort and observation, rather than expectation. You feel the tug of memory and forgetfulness in equal measure. The harbour in Seville, the strait, the islands, the calm of the open sea, all blend together, smudged by repetition, distance, and the unrelenting rhythm of survival. You are no longer the same person who left, nor fully a creature of this world at sea. You exist somewhere in between, a shadow, a rhythm, a measured breath. The wind picks up, sails respond, ropes creak, and the ship leans into motion. The ocean stretches in all directions, vast and indifferent, indifferent to grief, to hope, to memory, to the echo of footsteps on distant decks. You lean against the railing and watch the water, noticing how the small swell reflects light and shadow, how colour fades into colour, how all distinctions blur with distance. You move through this world carefully, deliberately, noting the rhythm of each plank, each rope, each breath. The crew follows a silent choreography, learned over months, adjusting sails, counting provisions, scraping decks. Each man is small against the ocean, yet part of the immense continuity that carries you forward. The horizon bends, but never ends. You trace it with your eyes, imagining it folding back, bending in ways you cannot perceive. You realize that in circling back, you have not returned. You have only been inscribed into the endless loop of water and wind, time and distance, memory and oblivion. You are both present and absent, moving because the ship moves, existing because the voyage persists. The maps are worn, the lines faded, the stars are unfamiliar. The sun rises and sets in muted patterns. You recognize none of it fully, yet you know the rhythm. Creak, breath, rope, swell, sail, horizon. You exist in the small, measured spaces between these repetitions, noting, enduring, observing. The world has circled you patiently, erasing and rewriting you as it wills. And still you breathe, you move, you endure. You continue into the blue that stretches endlessly, carrying memory, loss, fatigue, and the quiet persistence of survival, circling back to the beginning, only to find that what has returned is neither wholly familiar nor entirely lost, but something fragile, measured, and real. The self that remains in motion. You step onto solid ground and feel the deck beneath your boots replaced by cobblestones. The sound is sharper, echoing oddly after months of water-muted footsteps and the constant groan of planks. The harbour stretches before you, familiar yet subtly altered. The smells are the same, tar and fish, salt and wood, mingled with the faint smoke of cooking fires. And yet the air feels heavier, denser, or perhaps it is just your lungs remembering how to fill themselves without the rhythm of rolling waves. Men and women move along the quay, faces open with curiosity, polite and expectant. You hear voices calling names, laughter, the slap of boots against stone. People lean over railings, crane their necks, or gesture to the ships, eager for tales, hungry for news of the world beyond. You remember the anticipation you once held for glory, for stories, for the thrill of recounting adventure. And now the thought feels distant, almost quaint, like a photograph faded at the edges. They ask what you saw. You hesitate, aware that words are inadequate. Maps, constellations, islands, straits, ice, sun, wind, all of it folds into the hollow of your chest. You cannot find phrases that capture months of monotony, the slow gnawing of hunger, the quiet erosion of certainty. Instead, you say simply, softly, water. The word floats between you and them, small, distilled, and sufficient in its insufficiency. They nod as if they understand. Perhaps they do. Perhaps they only acknowledge the effort of explanation, the attempt to compress an endless expanse into a human-sized sentence. You notice the subtle relief in their eyes. Not understanding, not disbelief, just recognition of a journey lived. A story told in the minimal language of survival. You move among them, stepping lightly, noticing the way the sun catches the edges of stone, the way the water laps against the quay, the way the wind carries scent and sound in ways both familiar and strange. You carry the voyage with you in ways that are invisible but persistent. The sway of balance, the sensitivity to smell, the faint hum of the ocean in your bones. Every step on land is accompanied by echoes of waves and rope, the creak of mast and plank, the gentle tug of tide against hull. The harbour feels smaller now. Its edges are defined, contained, and yet the world beyond it seems both vast and distant. You notice every detail, the glint of sunlight on water, the flutter of seagulls' wings, the movement of people in patterns you once took for granted. You watch the ropes of the quay, the nets drying in the sun, the barrels stacked neatly, and you're aware of the ship still in the background, a silent reminder that even here the voyage continues in memory. You move through the crowd, recognizing faces that belong to a world you once knew yet cannot fully inhabit. Conversations pass you by, talk of markets, families, repairs, politics. You hear them, but the words do not penetrate fully. Your mind remains partially at sea, half in rhythm with waves and wind, half tethered to the solidity of land. You are present, and yet not fully. The streets smell of bread and smoke, of animals and earth. You inhale deeply, noticing texture and depth, and for a moment the body remembers hunger, fullness, sensation beyond survival. You carry the taste of islands, the sweetness of fruit, the metallic tang of long months of salt water, the dry grit of biscuit chewed endlessly, the lingering warmth of tropical suns. All these flavours and sensations exist alongside the sharp, ordinary smells of home, creating a strange layering of time, memory and perception. You pause to observe a child playing near the quay. The laughter rises and falls, sharp and ephemeral, like a bell struck in fog. You notice the way the small body moves, fluid and unself-conscious, and for an instant you feel recognition of life continuing, of cycles unbroken, of human motion in contrast to the deliberate, unyielding rhythm of the ocean. And then the memory of months at sea intrudes, the silence, the repetition, the slow erosion of certainty. You feel both worlds simultaneously pressing against you, neither fully absorbable. You hear the merchants calling prices, the creak of carts, the shuffle of boots. The cadence is different from the ship, precise and yet unpredictable. You notice how the human body adapts, how you shift weight to keep balance on rolling decks, and now relearn the subtle calibration needed to walk on solid ground. The muscles, memory ingrained in months of motion, respond to a world that no longer moves beneath you. You feel the tension and release, the shift of foot against stone, the small, unnoticed adjustments that once went unnoticed in the sway of the ship. You approach the quay's edge, looking at the water that laps gently against posts and boats. It is calm, finite, familiar in ways that contrast sharply with the infinite expanses you crossed. You reach down, let your fingers touch it, and notice the difference. No rolling waves, no subtle tug at your body, no cold creep beneath skin, only water, patient and still, a reflection of sky and sun, and yet it carries memory. The taste of months at sea, the constant motion, the relentless cadence that never pauses, never forgives, never forgets. You notice the ships in harbour, smaller, grounded, constrained. Their sails hang slack, masts straight, ropes loose. They seem almost like toys compared to the living, breathing, heaving vessels that carried you around the globe. You remember the smell of tar, the sound of creaking wood, the taste of salt and wind. You remember the quiet horrors of monotony, the subtle humour that surfaced in shared endurance, the slow erosion of certainty and comfort. All of it is present, layered over this calm, grounded world, a weight that neither lifts nor diminishes. People ask questions. What lands did you see? What creatures? What storms? And you answer in minimal phrases, letting your voice float, unburdened by detail, because the details cannot be carried back intact. Water, you say again, or wind or sky. Words are insufficient, yet sufficient for this audience. They accept them, nod, smile politely, perhaps recognizing that some experiences cannot be fully translated. You walk slowly through the quay, feeling both the solidity and the strange dissonance of land. Each step is careful, measured, an unconscious meditation. The horizon stretches behind the harbour, still infinite in a sense, the faint trace of waves beyond the small boats. The world seems smaller, yet heavier with memory. You feel the weight of months, the erosion of self, the persistence of motion that has carried you through storms, hunger, and silence. You pause, resting hands on the railing, eyes tracing the water's edge. You imagine the miles you have travelled, the paths you have traced, the oceans crossed and storms endured, and yet you realise none of it feels like completion. You have returned, but nothing has been restored to its original state. The city is unchanged in structure, yet altered in perception. You are altered irreversibly. You carry the voyage in the angles of your joints, the rhythm of your breath, the quiet awareness of each heartbeat, and the horizon calls quietly, in memory, if not in sight. It looks back at you, patient, indifferent, eternal. You feel the weight of observation, the subtle insistence of distance, the knowledge that motion does not end because land has been reached. You are part of something larger, beyond names, beyond maps, beyond understanding. The voyage does not end at the quay. It continues in memory, in rhythm, in the quiet, enduring presence of water. The sun dips lower, casting long shadows across cobblestones and boats, and you remain standing, observing, breathing. People continue to ask, to watch, to expect stories. You continue to answer in minimal phrases, in small truths, in words that reflect only the surface of a vast, endless experience. The harbour is solid, finite, familiar, yet foreign. The ships rest, the ropes slack, the sails furled, and still the water stretches, and still it waits, patient and eternal. You step back, feeling your feet on stone, your hands on railing, your body grounded yet still carrying rhythm and memory. The city hums around you, alive with people and sound, yet you hear the ocean beneath it all, whispering in waves and wind, in creak and sway, in patient indifference. You are both here and elsewhere, a traveller returned but not restored, a witness to the world's continuity and its quiet disregard. And you understand, home is not a place, nor a harbour, nor a set of questions answered. Home is the rhythm you carry, the weight you endure, the quiet motion that does not pause. The harbour nods politely, people smile and wait, and you look at the horizon and it looks back. You are part of its endlessness, patient, enduring, and irrevocably changed. And that brings us to the end of tonight's story. Feel free to like, subscribe, or leave a comment with another forgotten corner of history you'd like explored next. If you'd like early access to more of these quiet descents into forgotten history, ad-free audio of the episodes, or just want to support the show, there's a link to the Patreon in the description. If you're listening on a podcast app, a rating or review helps more people find their way to these stories. And special thanks to the supporters who make this show possible, including our chroniclers, Andrew S. and Rich Davis. Sleep well.